I'm Bill Mercer, 71 years old, and I'm currently buttering a piece of sourdough toast. There is a specific sound that butter makes when it meets bread that is still warm from the toaster. A quiet, rasping sizzle that whispers of comfort. It requires patience. If the bread is too hot, the butter melts into grease. If it is too cold, the butter tears the crumb. It must be room temperature, applied with a flat knife, spreading all the way to the crust in a smooth, golden wave. I take my grilled cheese seriously. It is not just a sandwich. It is a contract between the heat and the grain. I was just about to lay the slice into the pan when the phone rang. It was the ringtone I assigned to my son, David. A frantic, jarring electronic pulse that always seemed to interrupt the good parts of my day. Dad! David's voice was tight, vibrating with the specific frequency of a man watching his bank account implode. You need to come down here. Now. I'm making lunch, David, I said, flipping the heat to medium-low. It's Tuesday. You have a full brigade. Why are you calling a retired line cook? The sauce is breaking, David said. I could hear the clatter of china and the hiss of steam in the background. Julian is trying to do the midnight braise for the fall menu launch. It's wrong, Dad. It tastes like wet cardboard, and the vulture just sat at table 4. I paused. The vulture. Arthur Penhaligon. The critic who didn't just review restaurants. He dissected them. He had once closed a bistro in Soho just by describing their risotto as mucus. Julian is the prodigy, isn't he? I asked, watching the cheese begin to sweat. The one with the degree in food science? Tell him to fix it. He can't, David whispered. He's using the immersion circulators. He's been cooking the short ribs for 48 hours at 62 degrees Celsius. He says the collagen breakdown is mathematically perfect, but the sauce? It won't hold. It separates the second it hits the plate. Dad, please. If Penhaligon hates this, we lose the star. Loom is done. I looked at my sandwich. The bread was turning a perfect, nutty brown. I sighed. I turned off the burner. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Don't let him serve it. Loom was less of a restaurant and more of a laboratory. The kitchen was a gleaming expanse of brushed stainless steel and white subway tile, illuminated by harsh, shadowless LED strips. There was no fire. There were no blackened iron pans. Instead, there were rows of water baths, vacuum sealers, and canisters of liquid nitrogen. It smelled of ozone and sanitizer, not roasted garlic and thyme. I walked through the swinging doors, my old wool cardigan looking absurdly out of place among the crisp white chef coats. The noise level was high, the sharp, staccato shouts of "Oui, chef," and the mechanical whir of blenders. David was standing at the pass, looking pale. He saw me and rushed over, grabbing my arm like a drowning man grabs a piece of driftwood. "Thank God," he hissed. "He's on the pass. He's plating the amuse-bouche now. Penhaligon is already asking about the braise." I looked toward the main station. There was Julian. He was young, barely 28, with a beard that was groomed with more care than he likely gave his stocks. He was holding a whipped cream siphon, dispensing a foam onto a slate tile. He moved with the arrogance of someone who believes he has solved the equation of flavour. I walked up to his station. A large pot of the signature sauce, the midnight braise reduction, sat on an induction burner. "Who is this?" Julian snapped, looking up. "David, get this old man out of my station. We are in the weeds." "This is my father," David said, his voice trembling slightly. He created the original recipe for the braise. Julian scoffed. The original recipe? That thing was a dinosaur. We've updated it. We clarified the stock with a centrifuge to remove impurities. Impurities of flavour, I said softly. I reached for a tasting spoon. Hey! Julian stepped forward. Sanitation. You can't just... I ignored him. I dipped the spoon into the dark, glossy liquid. I put it to my lips. I closed my eyes. I waited. The texture was smooth. Too smooth. It coated the tongue like a silicone lubricant. Then came the taste. Beef. Red wine. Shallots. Thyme. All the notes were there, but they were singing in different rooms. They hadn't met. They hadn't struggled together. It was technically flawless. And it was completely dead. Well, Julian asked, crossing his arms. The viscosity is perfect. The pH is balanced at 4.2. It's flat, I said, tossing the spoon into the sink. Flat? Julian's face reddened. I used a refractometer to measure the sugar content. It is mathematically identical to the profile. It lacks the bottom note, I said, looking him in the eye. It has no sorrow. Julian laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Sorrow? We don't cook with emotions here, old man. We cook with chemistry. This is a reduction of Cabernet Sauvignon, veal demi-glace, and aromatics. There is no sorrow in the ingredient list. You cooked the wine, I said, pointing to the pot. You boiled it. You rushed the alcohol off. I reduced it by half. You tortured it, I corrected. You didn't bruise it. You treated the wine like water. You have to hurt the grapes before they forgive you. You have to let it almost burn, Julian. Almost. You're talking nonsense, Julian spat. Metaphors. This is why traditional French cooking is dying. We are precise. We are consistent. You are boring, I said. Just then, the ticket machine at the pass screeched. Ch-ch-ch. The expeditor shouted, his voice cracking. Order in. Table 4. The Vulture. 1 tasting menu. 1 midnight braise. VIP. The kitchen went silent. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation. Julian turned back to his pot. He grabbed a ladle. Fire the braise, he shouted. Plating in 3 minutes. He swirled the sauce. And then it happened. The chemistry failed. As he agitated the liquid, a ring of oil appeared at the edge. Then another. The glossy emulsion shattered. The fat separated from the liquid, turning the beautiful dark sauce into a greasy, broken mess of oil and vinegar. No, Julian whispered. He grabbed a whisk. He whipped it furiously. No, no, no. It's breaking, David moaned, putting his head in his hands. He's watching the kitchen door. Penhaligon is watching. Add xanthan gum, Julian yelled to his sous chef. Get the stabilizer. Don't you dare, I said. If you put gum in that sauce, Penhaligon will taste the texture in a second. He'll call it wallpaper paste. Then what do I do? Julian screamed, throwing the whisk down. It clattered loudly against the steel bench. The suspension is gone. The protein's denatured. He looked at the pot. He looked at the ticket. He looked defeated. David grabbed my shoulder. His grip was hard, painful. Dad, fix it. Please. We lose the star tonight if this plate doesn't go out. I know I should have listened. I know I shouldn't have changed the menu. But please. I looked at my son. I saw the fear in his eyes. The same fear I had 40 years ago when I opened my first burner at the Gilded Lily. I looked at Julian. He was backed into the corner, staring at his broken science experiment. I sighed. I took off my wool cardigan. I folded it neatly and placed it on a prep table. I unbuttoned my cuffs and rolled up the sleeves of my flannel shirt. "Give me a cast iron skillet," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "And get that immersion circulator out of my way." "We don't have cast iron," Julian stammered. "We use multi-ply copper." "Find one," I barked. "Check the basement. Check the display wall." "I don't care. And bring me raw bones. Not the cleaned ones. The dirty ones. The ones with the marrow still in them." I walked to the station. I turned the induction burner off. I turned the gas range on. The blue flame roared to life, a sudden violent hiss that sounded like home. "I'm Bill Mercer," I said to the terrified line cooks, "and we're going to cook something real." 12 minutes. In a professional kitchen, 12 minutes is an eternity. It is enough time to ruin a steak, enough time to overcook a fish, and enough time to lose a Michelin star. But to save a sauce? To resurrect the dead? It was barely a heartbeat. "Get out of the way," I said, hip-checking Julian aside. He stumbled, looking at me like I'd just brought a live grenade into his sterile laboratory. "You can't use cast iron on an induction top," he sputtered. "It scratches the glass." "I don't care about the glass," I growled. "I care about the heat." I threw the heavy black skillet onto the one gas burner in the corner, the one they kept for emergencies. I cranked the knob. The flame didn't just flicker, it roared. A blue jet engine. I let the pan sit there. 30 seconds. 40 seconds. I waited until I saw wisps of grey smoke curling off the seasoned iron. "Where are the bones?" I demanded. A prep cook, eyes wide, slid a tray of raw veal bones towards me. They were ugly, jagged, bloody. Not the clean bleached bones Julian used for his stocks. "You're not going to roast them?" Julian asked, horrified. "You need to roast them in the oven at 400 degrees for an hour to extract the gelatin." "We don't have an hour," I said. "We have 11 minutes. I threw the bones into the screaming hot pan. The sound was violent. It was the sound of moisture being instantly vaporized. Grease splattered onto my forearms. I didn't flinch. I let it burn. I wanted the carbon. "The aromatics," I yelled. David handed me a bowl of diced onions, carrots, and celery. I dumped them in. I didn't stir. "Move the pan," Julian shouted, reaching for the handle. "The onions are burning. Look at the edges. They're black." I slapped his hand away. "Leave it." "It's the Maillard reaction," Julian argued, reciting his textbook. "It stops at golden brown. Anything past that is carbonization. It's bitter." "It's the Mercer burn," I corrected, staring into the smoke. "And yes, it is bitter. That's the point. I let the onions go past gold, past brown. I let them turn a deep, terrifying charcoal colour. The smell filling the kitchen wasn't the polite aroma of a vegetable stock. It was aggressive. It smelled like a campfire. It smelled like a mistake. "Deglaze," I ordered. David handed me a bottle of cheap red table wine. Not the expensive Cabernet Julian had boiled to death. I poured half the bottle in. The pan erupted in a geyser of purple steam. The flame caught the alcohol vapours. Whoosh! A 3-foot pillar of fire shot up toward the ventilation hood. The line cooks gasped. Julian stepped back, shielding his face. I scraped the bottom of the pan with a wooden spoon, dislodging the blackened bits of onion and seared beef fat. I let it reduce. Hard. Fast. Violent boiling. "It's too thin," David whispered, watching the clock. "Dad, we have 6 minutes. It won't thicken in time." "It doesn't need to thicken," I said. "It needs to remember." I reached into the pocket of my flannel shirt. I pulled out a small crinkled paper packet. What is that? Julian asked, squinting. Hydrocolloids? Xanthan? Agar? No, I said. It's breakfast. I tore the packet open. It was instant coffee, the cheap freeze-dried crystals I drank every morning. I dumped a teaspoon of it into the bubbling black liquid. Then I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a square of 90% dark chocolate. I dropped that in too. Coffee? Julian looked like he was going to be sick. You are putting instant coffee and chocolate into a veal reduction? You're destroying the profile. It will be acrid. Bitterness, Julian, I said, swirling the pan as the chocolate melted into the glossy dark pool. Life is bitter. That's what makes the sweet taste real. You kids today, you want everything to be sugar and umami. You want to be hugged, but a great sauce shouldn't hug you. It should haunt you. I turned the heat off. Butter, I said. Cold. Cubed. David handed it to me. I mounted the sauce, Monterey Burr, whisking the cold fat into the hot liquid. The sauce transformed. It stopped being a thin reduction and became a velvet emulsion. It was dark, almost black, with a sheen like obsidian. Strain it, I said. David ran it through the chinoise. The liquid that came out wasn't the pale, perfect brown of Julian's scientific experiment. It was the colour of old mahogany. It smelled of earth, smoke, and deep, dark wine. Plate it, I ordered. Julian hesitated. He looked at the sauce. He looked at me. Do it, David yelled. Julian grabbed the short rib, his perfectly sous-vide, tender, flavourless meat, and placed it on the china. He ladled my sauce over it. The sauce didn't run. It didn't separate. It coated the meat like a blanket. Service! I shouted. The waiter grabbed the plate and ran. The kitchen doors swung shut. Silence descended on the line. The extraction fans hummed. My cast-iron pan sat in the sink, hissing as the cold water hit it. Now, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. We wait. Julian was staring at the pot of leftover sauce. He dipped a spoon in. He tasted it. His eyes went wide. He didn't speak. He just stood there, letting the flavour roll over his tongue. The shock of the char, the depth of the wine, and that secret, invisible backbone of coffee and chocolate that tied it all together. It's, Julian stammered. It tastes like wood smoke and rain. It tastes like 1978, I said. 3 minutes passed, then 5. David was pacing. He hates it. He's writing the review right now. He's going to say we served him burnt onions. The kitchen doors swung open. The waiter stood there. He looked terrified. Chef? The waiter squeaked. What? David snapped. Is it sent back? No, chef. Mr. Penhaligon. He's crying. Crying? Julian asked. Like, bad crying? No. He just sat there for a minute. Then he wiped his eyes. He wants to see the chef. Julian straightened his jacket. He reached for his toko. Not you, the waiter said, looking past the young prodigy. He asked for the old guard. He said, send out the ghost. David looked at me. The ghost? I sighed. I rolled my sleeves down. I buttoned my cuffs. I put my wool cardigan back on. I'll handle this, I said. I walked out of the bright, noisy kitchen and into the hushed, ambient gloom of the dining room. It was elegant, quiet, expensive. Arthur Penhaligon sat at table 4. He was a small man with a sharp face and glasses that magnified his judgment. The plate in front of him was clean. He had used a piece of bread to wipe every drop of the sauce. He looked up as I approached. He squinted in the dim light. Then he stood up. Bill Mercer, he whispered. "Hello, Arthur," I said. "It's been a while." "I thought you were dead," Penhaligon said, his voice thick with emotion. "I heard you died in '92. I wrote an obituary for you." "I read it," I said. "It was very touching, a bit heavy on the adjectives." Penhaligon looked at the empty plate. "That flavour, the Mercer reduction. I haven't tasted that since the Gilded Lily closed. I've eaten in Paris, Tokyo, Copenhagen. Nobody gets the burn right. They're all too scared to burn the onions." "They rely on thermometers, Arthur," I said. "They forgot how to rely on their nose." David and Julian had followed me out. They were standing by the service station, listening. "You..." David stepped forward, his face pale. "You wrote the menu for the Gilded Lily. Dad, that was the greatest restaurant in New York. It was legendary. The chef was anonymous. They called him the Ghost of 78. Penhaligon looked at David. "Your father isn't just a cook, son. He's the reason New York has a culinary scene. He invented the midnight braise in a basement in the East Village when he was 20 years old." David looked at me. He looked like he was seeing a stranger. "Why didn't you tell me? I grew up eating your grilled cheese. I thought you were just a dad." I shrugged. I felt the arthritis in my hands. "I just liked to cook, Dave. I didn't like the fame. I didn't like the cameras. I didn't like the noise. When the food stops being about the dinner and starts being about the chef, it tastes different." I looked at Penhaligon. "Is the star safe, Arthur?" Penhaligon smiled. It was a rare, genuine expression. "The star is safe, Bill, assuming this stays on the menu." "It will," David said quickly. "It absolutely will." I turned to Julian. The young chef looked humbled, defeated. He was holding his molecular siphon like a useless toy. "Here," I said, reaching for the apron I had discarded on the chair. I tossed it to him. "But," Julian stammered, "I can't make that sauce. I don't know the chemistry." "Forget the chemistry," I said. "Recipes are just maps, kid. You have to drive the car. Burn the onions. Trust your gut. And for God's sake, put some instant coffee in the pantry." I patted David on the shoulder. "You have a good restaurant, son. Don't let the science get in the way of the supper." "Where are you going?" David asked. "Stay. Have a drink. We need to celebrate." "I have to go," I said, checking my old wristwatch. "I left the stove on." "The stove?" "I was making a grilled cheese," I said. "And if I don't get back, the butter is going to be too cold." I walked out the back door into the cool night air of the alley. I left the noise, the clatter, the Michelin stars, and the ego behind me. I walked home. It was a 20-minute walk. My knees hurt, but my hands smelled like roasted garlic and wood smoke. It was a good smell. I walked into my quiet kitchen. The bread was still sitting in the pan. The cheese was waiting. I turned the burner on. Low heat. I watched the butter melt. I listened to the sizzle. "Perfect," I whispered to the empty room. "Simple,